The 1960s were a time of revolution, not just in politics or civil rights, but in music. Behind the bright harmonies and radio-friendly choruses were deeper shadows, stories of heartbreak, rebellion, censorship, and secrets buried in studio walls. Some songs carried pain, others masked controversy and melody, but all of them left a mark. So today, we're looking back at the 10 darkest secrets behind 1960s classic songs. Number 10, I Want to Hold Your Hand by the Beatles. On the surface, it was pure joy, teenage longing wrapped in harmony. But when the Beatles brought this song to America in 1964, few knew the intense pressure and control surrounding their image. The song's cheerful simplicity masked an ironclad media strategy, carefully curated appearances, and a ban on discussing the band's drug use, relationships, or internal tensions. The mop tops were polished, but behind the scenes, the cracks had already begun.
And when I touch you, I feel...
Capitol Records had delayed releasing Beatles songs in the United States for over a year. But when I Want to Hold Your Hand finally hit American radio, the timing was explosive. Within weeks, Beatlemania erupted, but so did the machinery. Brian Epstein, the band's manager, dictated everything from haircuts to interview topics. Reporters were warned not to ask about John Lennon's marriage or George Harrison's politics. The Beatles were branded as safe, sweet, and universal, a myth they quietly resented.
When I say that something...
What most fans didn't realize was how quickly the band began to outgrow the image this song created. By the end of 1964, Lennon was already experimenting with drugs, McCartney was pushing for more complex arrangements, and the group was chafing under the media mask. The song that launched them in America had also locked them in a cage. In private, Lennon would later call it a bit of rubbish.
You let me hold your hand.
And yet, for all its gloss, I Want to Hold Your Hand is historic. It broke the Beatles in the United States, sold over 1 million copies in days, and opened the British invasion floodgates. But its darkness lies in what it hid: the pressure, the branding, the loss of control. Behind the scream-filled theaters was a band already aching to be something more.
And when I touch you, I feel happy.
Number 9, Gimme Shelter by the Rolling Stones. Released in 1969, Gimme Shelter sounds like a storm rolling in, and that's exactly what it was. While the Stones were at the height of their fame, this song emerged from chaos: the Vietnam War, racial violence, and the looming shadow of Altamont. The backing vocals, chilling and soulful, came from Mary Clayton, who was pulled from bed while pregnant and pushed her voice so hard she miscarried shortly after. That scream? It came with a price. The song was recorded in Los Angeles during a time of global unrest. Riots flared across American cities. News of My Lai and Kent State spread like fire. In the middle of it, Mick Jagger and Keith Richards crafted a song that felt like a warning siren. But it was Clayton's guest vocal, raw, unrehearsed, and unrelenting, that transformed it from haunting to historic. She stepped into the studio around midnight, barefoot and exhausted, and delivered the line, "Rape, murder, it's just a shot away," with a force that shook the room. In an interview years later, Clayton recalled hearing something pop during the take. She was 4 months pregnant. Hours later, she lost the child. Her voice cracked history open, but the music never acknowledged the cost. Her name was buried in liner notes. No headline told her story. As the Stones toured the world, Mary Clayton quietly stepped back into the shadows, carrying both grief and legacy. Gimme Shelter wasn't just a song about the end of the 60s. It was the end. The Altamont Free Concert, meant to be Woodstock's darker twin, erupted into violence and death as the Stones performed. The dream had curdled, hope had bled out, and this song captured it all, not with a message, but with a scream. Number 8, He Hit Me, It Felt Like a Kiss by the Crystals.
He hit me, and it felt like a kiss.
Produced by Phil Spector in 1962, this song shocked even an era known for turning a blind eye to abuse. Based on a real confession from Little Eva about her boyfriend, the lyrics portrayed violence as proof of love. Radio stations recoiled. The Crystals themselves hated the song. It was pulled almost immediately. The damage was done. It exposed the sinister romanticism that often lurked beneath pop's surface.
And I knew he loved me.
The track was written by Jerry Goffin and Carole King after Little Eva, best known for the locomotion, told them her boyfriend hit her, but she believed it was out of love. What followed was an attempt at artistic interpretation, not endorsement. Yet when the Crystals laid it down under Spector's heavy, echoing production, the result felt eerie, even celebratory. "He hit me and it felt like a kiss" wasn't framed as critique. It was delivered like a lullaby.
Yes, he hit me.
The backlash was immediate. New York DJs refused to play it. Feminist voices called it dangerous. Even in a time when domestic violence was rarely discussed, this song struck a nerve. The Crystals were blindsided. They had no idea what the track would sound like until they heard the final version. When it aired, they were horrified. They never performed it live, and yet it slipped into the cultural bloodstream, an uncomfortable relic that still sparks debate.
I had been untrue.
Phil Spector, always chasing shock value, stood by the song, but Carole King would later distance herself, admitting regret over the message. The Crystals had been used as a vessel for something far more complex than pop could handle, and beneath the sugary harmonies was a dark no amount of reverb could hide. Number 7, Sound of Silence, Simon and Garfunkel.
It seeds while I was sleeping.
When The Sound of Silence first hit airwaves in the mid-1960s, it felt like a whisper to a restless generation. But few knew it had started as a commercial failure and was remixed without Simon and Garfunkel's permission. Producer Tom Wilson added electric instruments behind their backs, turning it into a folk rock hit. The song's eerie stillness masked not just alienation, but also creative betrayal.
And in the naked light I saw.
The original acoustic version was released in 1964 on the duo's debut album Wednesday Morning 3 a.m., which quickly flopped. Disheartened Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel went their separate ways. But Wilson, who had just worked on Bob Dylan's Electric Pivot, saw potential. Without consulting the artist, he overdubbed drums, bass, and electric guitar, injecting urgency into what had been a hushed lament. He released the new version as a single.
Silence like a cancer grows.
By the time Simon and Garfunkel heard the electric remix, it was already climbing the charts. Their reaction was mixed, shocked, yet aware of its success. The song eventually hit #1 in early 1966, cementing their reunion. But the moment marked a turning point. An anthem of quiet disillusionment was reborn through studio manipulation. The irony was profound. A song about silence had been altered without their voice.
Silent raindrops fell.
Lyrically, The Sound of Silence was never soft. Its verses painted images of spiritual emptiness, societal disconnection, and the failure to communicate, all wrapped in poetic restraint. It became a soundtrack for grief after John F. Kennedy's assassination, then again during Vietnam. But its origin story remained murky, a reminder that sometimes even silence is re-engineered. Number 6, My Generation by The Who. My Generation became a youth anthem in 1965, snarling against conformity. But Roger Daltrey's stutter wasn't just stylistic, it was controversial. Some assumed it mocked speech disorder and demanded it be pulled. Meanwhile, the band lived out the chaos they sang about. Equipment was smashed, fights broke out, and Keith Moon's drumming on the track was so violent it nearly destroyed the studio mics. The song wasn't just rebellion, it was self-destruction in real time. Pete Townsend wrote the song on a train, seething with frustration after the Queen Mother allegedly had his car towed because it was parked outside her residence. The song came from that moment of rage, but quickly grew into a broader statement. Young people were tired of being dismissed, silenced, or shaped into someone else's mold. I Hope I Die Before I Get Old wasn't just a lyric. It became a generational scream.
Dig what we all.
In the studio, the band pushed every limit. The stutter wasn't in the original concept. Daltrey added it spontaneously, channeling the nervous, jerking energy of disaffected youth. But not everyone appreciated it. The BBC almost banned the track, fearing it would offend people with speech impediments. At one point, the label even considered cutting the vocal entirely, but The Who refused to soften the edge. They weren't trying to sound polite.
People try to put us.
The band's volatility became its own legend. Moon's drumming shattered cymbals. Townshend's windmill strums sliced through speakers. My generation didn't just talk about collapse, it embodied it. And when they performed it live, it often ended in destruction. Amps overturned, guitars demolished, stages reduced to rubble. The song was raw nerve, exposed and electric. Number 5. River Deep, Mountain High by Ike and Tina Turner. Phil Spector called this his masterpiece, and in sound it was towering. But its making was haunted. Tina Turner recorded the vocal in a single, brutal session, pushed relentlessly by Spector. Ike Turner wasn't allowed in the studio, a rare moment where Tina was free, and yet she left feeling used. The song flopped in the United States, breaking Spector's confidence and deepening Tina's silence in a marriage already marked by abuse. Spector had long dreamed of creating the perfect pop record. With his full wall of sound, he gathered over 20 session musicians, including members of the Wrecking Crew, and layered strings, horns, percussion, and vocals into an unstoppable wave. But his obsession with control came at a cost. Tina, stripped of her usual band and husband, was told to sing the song again and again until she broke. And when she did, Spector declared it the greatest vocal he'd ever captured. The public didn't respond. In the United States, the song stalled on the charts, peaking only at number 88. Radio stations were unsure what to make of the swirling wall of orchestration and raw vocal agony. Some found it overwhelming. Others found it too intense. Spector was crushed. He retreated from major production for years. But in the United Kingdom, River Deep, Mountain High was hailed as genius, reaching number 3 and becoming a favorite among British rockers. For Tina, the recording was both a triumph and a scar. She later described the session as exhausting, emotionally and physically, but also a turning point. It showed her what she could do without Ike's control. Yet, when the applause faded, she returned home to a volatile marriage. The darkness in her voice on that track wasn't just acting, it was lived. Number 4, Ode to Billie Joe by Bobby Gentry. In 1967, Bobby Gentry whispered a mystery across the airwaves. Ode to Billie Joe told the story of a boy who jumped off a bridge and a family that barely reacted. But the real darkness was in what wasn't said. What was thrown from that bridge? Why did Billie Joe die? Gentry refused to explain, leaving a Southern Gothic riddle that haunted listeners for decades. The silence was part of the wound. Gentry recorded the track in a single take, just her voice and guitar, before it was later embellished with strings. Her vocal was restrained, almost conversational, drawing listeners in like a secret being told around a kitchen table. The setting was rural Mississippi, and the language was plain, but the subtext ran deep. Suicide, denial, repressed trauma, and the eerie coldness of routine. No one in the song seems truly shocked, not even his own mother.
Seems like nothing ever comes to no good.
Speculation swirled. Was Billie Joe gay? Had he and the narrator committed a crime? Thrown a baby off the bridge? Gentry never answered. In interviews, she insisted that the song wasn't about the mystery. It was about the way people ignore tragedy, about how small-town life keeps going, even when something unspeakable happens. That refusal to resolve the story was radical. It demanded listeners sit with their discomfort. Despite the heavy subject, Ode to Billie Joe became a massive hit, knocking All You Need Is Love from the #1 spot. It earned Gentry 3 Grammy Awards and instant fame. But just as quickly as she rose, she retreated, eventually vanishing from public life entirely. The mystery in the song mirrored the mystery of its creator.
And Mama hollered at the back door, y'all remember?
Number 3, Fortunate Son by Creedence Clearwater Revival. It was only 2 minutes long, but Fortunate Son hit like a protest march with a snarling guitar. Released in 1969, it condemned the hypocrisy of the Vietnam draft, where the rich stayed home and the poor went to war. The song was banned from several armed forces radio stations and drew FBI attention. For CCR, it was a truth too loud to ignore. For Washington, it was an anthem they wanted gone. John Fogerty wrote it in a burst of rage after reading about David Eisenhower, grandson of the former president, marrying Richard Nixon's daughter, and being spared from combat. To Fogerty, it symbolized the deep injustice of a war that sent working-class kids to die while the elite passed laws from safe offices. The lyrics were blunt. "It ain't me. I ain't no senator's son." It was not a protest wrapped in metaphor. It was direct fire. Despite, or perhaps because of, its clarity, the song was a problem for those in power. While it was never officially blacklisted, Armed Forces Radio pulled it from rotation under quiet pressure. Fogerty later revealed that the FBI had a file on him. The band became symbols of the growing rift between American youth and its government, even though they rarely appeared at anti-war rallies. Their message was in the music, not the headlines. Musically, Fortunate Son is relentless. Just over 2 minutes long, it barely pauses for breath. The guitars grind, Fogerty's voice bites, and there's no chorus to soothe the burn, just a buildup of frustration that explodes and ends, leaving the anger hanging. It wasn't designed for comfort, it was designed to shout. Number 2, Strange Fruit by Nina Simone, cover. Though written and first recorded in the 1930s by Billie Holiday, Nina Simone's 1965 rendition of Strange Fruit brought it back into focus during the Civil Rights era. A protest against lynching in America, the song was almost too heavy to bear. Simone's version was slow, haunting, and deliberate. It didn't just tell a story, it forced America to look. And many radio stations refused to. Where Billie Holiday's version had been mournful and subdued, Simone's take added something sharper, righteous fury. Her sparse piano chords hung in the air like tension before a storm. Every syllable landed with weight. When she sang Black Bodies Swinging in the Southern Breeze, she made it clear this was no metaphor. This was real, recent, and still happening. It wasn't a performance, it was an accusation.
Black bodies swinging.
The original poem had been written by a Jewish school teacher named Abel Mirapol, who was horrified by photographs of lynchings. Billie Holiday had made it famous, but Simone rearmed it for a new fight. In the wake of Medgar Evers' assassination and the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church, Strange Fruit became more than a song. It became a political act. Playing it meant picking a side.
Bulging eyes.
Simone often closed her concerts with it, dimming the lights and letting silence follow the final note. She never softened the edges. She didn't want comfort, she wanted confrontation. Some shows ended in stunned quiet, others in tears. But always the song lingered. Censors hated it, activists clung to it. Its very presence was resistance.
Bodies swinging in the...
Number 1, Paint It Black by the Rolling Stones. Sitar, darkness, despair. Paint It Black wasn't just a hit, it was a descent. Released in 1966, it marked a turn toward psychedelic shadows. Inspired by grief and depression, the song explored nihilism at a time when most pop songs were about love. Brian Jones's sitar gave it a ghostly edge, while Jagger's vocals hinted at something deeper than heartbreak, a wish for erasure. It wasn't about sadness, it was about vanishing. The song emerged during a time of upheaval. The Vietnam War raged, counterculture was fracturing, and the Stones were shifting from blues roots into something darker. Mick Jagger wrote the lyrics quickly. channeling feelings of loss and alienation. Some believed it was about the death of a lover. Others saw it as a metaphor for the futility of war. But the truth was more abstract. It captured a mood, not a message. A black veil over everything. Brian Jones, increasingly isolated within the band, brought the sitar into the track after being influenced by Ravi Shankar and George Harrison's experiments. His droning line became the spine of the song, giving it an Eastern, trance-like pull. The sitar didn't just add novelty, it added doom. Beneath it all, Charlie Watts's relentless drums rolled like a funeral march. The song was alive with absence. Paint It Black shot to #1 in both the United States and United Kingdom, but critics and censors were uneasy. The song didn't resolve, it didn't heal. Its narrator wanted to see the sun blotted out from the sky. That line alone triggered concern. Some stations refused to play it, others edited it down, but fans couldn't look away. It was raw, real, and uncomfortably close. They came wrapped in vinyl and broadcast through tinny radios. But these songs carried far more than melody. They carried weight. Behind each chorus was a shadow. Behind each hook, a human cost. Some whispered their truths, others screamed them, and yet they endured. Decades later, we still return to them. Not just for nostalgia, but for the courage they held. The 1960s weren't all peace signs and pop charts. Some of its most lasting songs came from pain, silence, and rebellion. If you felt the echo of that era today, like this video and subscribe to our channel for more journeys through the music that shaped a generation. Which song hit you the hardest, and why? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, keep the needle steady and the music playing.